The further the elevator descended, the more piercing the sounds of the screams are. I feel my body tensing up. I feel a nauseating sickness overwhelm me. The screams continue to grow. My mind is overcome by things I don't quite understand. I can see things that are indescribable, and I feel the horrors of the madness I'm witnessing sinking ever deeper. The sharp claws of my ever-dwindling sanity are now tearing my mind apart internally. I'm not sure any of my equipment is working anymore. Farther, I descend as the screams grow louder, and soon I'm unable to discern if those screams are right outside the elevator or they're coming from my mind. Could it be both? No sooner do I question these things, do I feel the elevator stop. There's a moment I'm sure it has stopped, before I suddenly snap to, and realize it is still descending. I'm not sure if that's real, however, as I see both possibilities, feeling their sensations and outcomes all at once. It is as though I stand in two realities, playing at their core all at once. This, mixed with everything else, has overcome me, to the point I feel my mind and body slowly tearing into two. I can't take it. Make it stop. What am I seeing? Are those screams real? No. No. There is a flash of pain, and for a second, one half of the splitting mind, one half of the dueling realities, goes black. I'm shocked to have found myself awoken, but I'm sure I didn't ever sleep. Right? I'm shaking, sweating, and the elevator has well and truly stopped. I feel a sense of impending dread, and an innate curiosity grab me as I pull my hands towards the elevator doors. I expect a searing heat, but I feel an icy cold as I touch the doors. The doors suddenly come to life, and as they open, they grate, and within the grating, I hear their screams. I know it is the dead, though. I have no real knowledge of how. I feel within their screams a flickering of doubt as I step outside. Before me appears to be a cliff that is a single, lone bridge. As I step toward the bridge, I sense something below. Looking downward, I see nothing but a black abyss. I can sense something, though. Something that even slightly dwelling on sends the coldest of shivers upon my spine. I make a near equal horrific realization as I look at the bridge. The bridge appears to be made of mangled limbs and flesh of humans. Seeing no other way out, I hesitantly step on the bridge. I'm taken aback in shock as I hear screaming from below my feet. An eye looks out, and through the piece has no mouth. I hear his screams echoing inside my mind. He cries of the pain he feels, the agony that knows no end, and of the suffering of my foot upon him. Terrified, I begin to run, and as I do, there are more screams, more souls in unending pain. They beg for my help, but what can I do? I feel their despair, and just the feeling drops me to my knees in both sympathy and ever-growing hopelessness as well. I pick myself up and rush across the bridge once again. The bridge stretches far, and I keep feeling flashes of something almost swimming in the dark abyss below. That's when my next step goes through the flesh below my feet. I rapidly attempt to pull my leg from out of the flesh, and as I pull my leg free, I look through the hole I have left. I feel something growing. The fear knows no bounds. A fear that makes me wish to throw myself into the pit below. I see myself for a moment, cackling like a madman, throwing myself from the bridge, It's too much. It's too much. I cry. I hear the screams grow louder, and then I see the red eyes. It is then I'm overcome with a searing headache, and I snap back too. Looking down, I'm terrified, as the other me descends with a smile, soon vanishing into the darkness below. A part of me feels dead inside, as I recover my faculties, and rush forth once again. I wish not to dwell a second longer, as I soon make it to the other side in haste. A black gate stands before me. It soon opens, and as it does, I can hear it speak my name. I walk ever so hesitantly inside, as the gates close again. I feel my body, or maybe it's my soul, shifting forward. There stands a house before me. Its doors are open, and as I step through its entrance, I see a long hall. A hall that appears never-ending. I see other people, or souls. They are pleading above. They are crying to someone who gives no obvious response. A woman with no eyes cries of her sight. She speaks of overwhelming dread. She claims she knows where it is. She now makes her bed. She begs forgiveness for the thing that led to her end. She asks for a second chance to free herself of her sins. There is no reply. Another man grabs me by the arm and begs me for a way out. He screams at me, pleading for an exit. I've been here for no longer than I know, he says. He tells me there is no longer a start. There is never an end. Instead, he just stands here. According to the man, no one ever responds, and that silence is partially what is so maddening. The man is old, and describes the feeling as though praying to a God who does not care, or who simply cannot hear. The man slowly lets go of me, and he cries. As he walks away, I can hear him say, "There is never an end. Why is there never an end? Am I to await an answer for eternity? Still, no matter how long I'm here, there's also that sense and dread. Will I be given a second chance, or is it the fire that is to be my end?" I feel an uneasiness as I try to shake off those words. I don't know if it's how he said it, or what he said, but I feel what is spoken in my core. I continue forward, and look around at all the people praying, crying, and sometimes doing both. I see the hopelessness they feel in their eyes, but it is also a palpable feeling. I continue to walk, and walk, and walk. The hall appears to have no end. Random fragments of my own past begin to overtake my mind. It's odd, and they are from random dates and times, and some of them are the most menial of things. Kicking dirt on a kid, stealing a cookie from a jar, things like that. Then, I'm overwhelmed with a feeling of regret. I see Sarah's face. I remember the things I feel, as well as what I felt in the past. My silence overtakes me, and I stop walking. That silence, never speaking how I felt to her. It is like water, drowning me suddenly. I feel myself gasping for air, as I also see myself on my knees, clawing into my skull, screaming to someone who seems to not be there. It's the weight of my silence that makes me drown. I'm sinking into a black abyss, feeling myself losing my breath. The thoughts are clearer than ever, despite feeling as though I'm dying. They are the thoughts of despair. This despair over the tiny regrets of my life was confusing at first, and saddening, but manageable. Now, however, my silence, my ultimate regret. Never speaking the secret love that I held for my life. Never telling Sarah how I felt. dragging her and my friends to this place. I now feel myself drowning in the sorrow of my regrets. Then, as I watch myself dying, there is a claw that refuses to let go. I feel the water of tears and past regret lowering on the brink of what I believe will be my death. I'm revived again. I look at my arms, legs, and clothing. I'm soaked. Suddenly, I'm overcome with the same feeling, and it repeats again. The drowning, the despair, the suffering, the hopelessness, the near-death experience, the inability to let go. The tides subsiding, but never in finality. I gasp for air, vomiting from my body the waters of my regrets. I look up, hoping for an end in sight, when I'm put through the same endless madness again and again and again. Every time I come back to, I cry for it to stop. I reach an arm to the sky. I reach an arm to the sky as I seek a way out, then watch as the waters fill around me again. The emotions cycle through once again. I think and truly believe each time that death has me. This will be the last time I think, and as I'm sure as can be that this is true, the waters subside, and I find myself retching. I now drop my face to the floor, my hands to the ground, and cry out apologies to seemingly no one. There is this feeling that I must plead my case, and yet there is also the crushing feeling that no one is listening. I feel myself crying, begging, pleading my case, when the tears begin to stream from my face. The waters return. I'm dying again. There is no hope, and there is no end. I'm lost as it happens again. This time I'll die, I think. This time for sure. The waters recede again. As I throw up the contents of my despair, I look around at those around me. I try with all hope that is left not to look to the air. I try instead to look for a way out, looking back and forth. However, there is only the hall. The souls pleading, begging, suffering in ways that aren't visible to me, but I imagine suffering immensely. There isn't a door anymore. There is no way back. No begging, no end, only despair as the cycle begins again. I'm not sure how long the pattern has been going on. At this point, I'm not sure I care. There's hopelessness bound to being in this state. You feel regret, then drown in it. There's a faint feeling of hope, but ultimately, you are left in a tsunami of the same feelings again. In between the drowning and the overwhelming regret, I see her face. It's Sarah. I wonder if I would change things if I could go back. I'm sure I would. Such thoughts devolve, however. They become bigger questions. Could I change it? Would I even know to change it? Was I always fated into such an end? Would my friends have died or vanished away? Maybe it wouldn't have been through this insane means, but who knows? It might have been worse somehow. Though, I'm not sure how you could get worse than this. The thoughts are soon followed by the simple want to see Sarah's face again. I notice that as every near drowning, I begin to slowly see her face growing into my reality. My hopes grow every time I see her there. I begin speaking about the things I've kept silent. Little by little, each time the hope grows even more. I'm not sure if her face is actually here or if I'm delirious, but I speak my truth anyway. As I do, the near drownings begin to subside. I feel the anchor weighing down my heart and my soul begin to let go. The tides of that never-ending tsunami of despair are beginning to subside until I feel myself on my knees, cackling like a madman in glee. there is hope, and as I look above, I no longer feel compelled to beg for another chance. I feel a strange warmth and acceptance. In taking responsibility for my current state, I wish stronger than ever now to find Sarah, regardless if she lives or is dead. I must push forward and do so of my own accord. It is with that final thought that I feel a shifting in the walls of the hall. This audible shifting knocks a few of the others around me down. I look to my right and turn to see what looks like a light. There's a problem, though. As I take steps towards the light, I notice the eyes of the other souls. They grow ravenous. They no doubt see the light as well. There's a sudden urgency, like I've never felt before, as I quickly begin sprinting towards the light. All around, I watch as the others begin rushing towards the door as well. I feel myself being grabbed, clawed at, and beaten as the others try to hold me back. I break free of their grip to find them begin to turn all at once. The hall begins to repeat, as I'm quite sure I've run past many of these souls already. The further I run towards the seemingly unreachable light, the darker the faces get. Their tears are now blood, as I see their despair grow into fury. I begin to see their true faces. They're indescribably horrific. I feel a madness begin to sink in and overtake me again as I continue to run towards the light. The door is still open and the figures stand, smiling now, twitching in place, but with the light, it's no longer bright as before. It now shines a horrific crimson. No, it can't be. I think to myself, there has to be a way out. There has to be. I can hear audible salivating now from around me. The now red-tinted hall shines a terrifying gaze upon the figures who stare. Their stare is of madness never-ending. I can read the looks on their faces. I must believe there is a way out. There was a start at one point, so surely there's an end. I continue to think, as I feel myself silently promising not to give up hope, to find an end, to see them twitching and watch as their fingernails grow into claws. I try to focus ahead, and that's when I see her silhouette. "Sarah," I cry, "I'm coming for you." I rush forth, and the second I take another step, I notice the twitching faces of horror around me suddenly crackle to life and begin rushing for me. I feel their nails digging into the flesh of my back as I continue to push forward. I can't give up. I can hear the crackling of bones and the contortions of bodies as I continue sprinting faster than I ever have before. I refuse to look back, as behind me is not where I wish my end to be, but still, I feel the madness stalking me. I can hear them running and clawing across the floor, walls, and even the ceiling above. I feel more scratches and even a fingernail breaking off into my flesh. The horrific sound coming from behind me is like a force of their will pushing against me as they rush to keep up. It works against me, and it's powerful, but I push onward. I feel one of them biting into my shoulder, but I smack them and never stop. The door is getting closer. Her silhouette appears more real. The insanity behind me and internally is something I try to suppress as I focus on what led to the opening of the door. The feeling of acceptance and the strength of will to wish to push forward. Suddenly, I feel the door approaching quickly. I'm just about to reach it when the silhouette is ripped into the shadows, screaming, and the crimson-red light from below fades to black. I feel myself plunge into the shadows behind the door, and the door soon slams behind me. I hear the insane screams from behind the door I've just passed through, but as I turn around, there is no longer a door. In time, those screams begin to fade, and I slowly dig out the fingernail embedded in my back. I feel a crippling pain overcome me as the nail comes out. My vision is blurry for a second, and there's a ringing that can be heard in my head before all returns to normal again. The screams soon fade, and I find myself in silent darkness. I catch my breath for a moment before I'm overtaken by a split second of despair. I'm not sure why I feel it, but it is as fleeting as the distant screams which have now faded. I regain my composure and feel around as I walk in darkness. That is when lights begin to come on. Red lights. As I look around, I notice that they are reminiscent of street lights you'd see in cities, but they appear to be made of hearts. The hearts are still beating, and as they do, the lights pulsate a bit. Walking forward, some more of the hearts begin to turn black. They bleed, some twist and contort. I'm not sure why, but I have very little time to think about it, as I notice a tall building standing before me. A neon red light springs to life. It is lips, with the words vacancy where the teeth should be. Staring at it longer makes me hear a pleasurable laughter ring through my mind. There's an aroma in the air now, and I feel my blood begin to subtly pump faster. My heart rate picks up, and I hear a door open. I look around and see no one. Everything around me is darkness. There's an unusual pull, a want to go inside, which I cannot fight. As though drawn, I walk forward, and the door gently shuts behind me. The interior of the building looks much like a seedy old motel. A woman smiles at me, exposing her well-endowed figure as she reaches over and gives me a piece of paper. With a wink and a smile, she bites her pen as she tells me to sign here to proceed forward. I feel my blood rushing at the sight of the woman, but I shake my head and resist. I struggle to keep my mind clear. The pain I had previously felt was now gone. I felt arousal and warmth. There was an unusual peace in the air, a pleasure as I stood at the counter. It was only then that I suddenly found myself opening my eyes. Looking down, I had a pen in my hand and saw my name signed upon the paper previously put before me. The receptionist smiled, telling me not to feel bad. I had to sign, and they always sign, she says. It's the only way forward, she says, with a laugh. Doubtful, I didn't have much time to think as the hall suddenly lit up before me. There was a red and pink glow as I heard the receptionist speak to me. Open your right hand, she said. Opening my hand, I saw a number on the inside. 69. I hear her tell me that's my room number. Someone was already waiting for me, she continued. With a smile, she faded, as did the counter with it. I felt a euphoria running through me as my body seemed to glide forward. I heard the pleasurable sounds of others in other rooms around me. Everyone seemed happy. Yes, happy, I thought. As the farther I went through the halls, the more I felt at peace. I soon arrived at my door. There appeared to be no lock. My hands gripped the door, which let out a pleasured moan. I jumped back for a moment, but the door opened, and suddenly I was inside. The door was no longer visible behind me. The receptionist's voice echoed inside my mind. Lay down. Her words raced through me like a toxin created to please. Have fun. The words drifted and echoed internally as I felt sleepy. I blinked, or I think I did, but it felt as though I'd slept in that time. Standing before me was Sarah. She was so beautiful. I felt the taste of her lips pressed against me and felt myself falling deeper into a trance. Yes, there would be no more problems. Just pleasure, I thought. We're finally reunited. I felt myself beginning to give in completely. I couldn't think clearly, and even less than that when I felt her lips. I could hear the faint echoing of a voice in my head, but it was drowned out by my current feeling of contentment and happiness that Sarah and I were finally together. Every time our lips met, I saw our future together. I saw marriage, our future children, growing old together. Everything I ever wanted or could ask for, the faint echo rang in the back of my mind again. I couldn't quite hear it, but I shrugged it off with the next kiss. The kiss was deep and intoxicating, among other things. I felt a warmth as I was transported far away from any worries and pain, just as I feel myself completely accepting the amazing truth of my future life with Sarah. I'm overcome with a searing pain in my head. I look down to see my nose is bleeding. I grip my head, but Sarah looks at me, and I feel assurance it's okay. Her kiss sends me into ecstasy until I'm hit again with a fleeting migraine that becomes more powerful. My nose begins to bleed a bit more, and I'm temporary, although hazily able to think. That's when I look up and see for a split second the horrific sight of the carcasses of other men and women. I'm feeling a warm kiss that soon turns cold. I look up to see that before me is not Sarah. No, it's a woman with scars and razor-sharp teeth. I feel that aroma again and the sound of the receptionist's voice within my mind telling me it's okay. Relax, the voice says. I feel myself lulling, and suddenly the body parts, the smell of decay and horror is gone. The woman is Sarah again, but the faint echo in my mind is now growing, as I'm not fully believing what I'm seeing. This can't be Sarah. No, it's a trick, I think. As though reacting to my thoughts, the illusion begins to fade. I look down in shock as I realize I'm sleeping on a bed of flesh and body parts. I shove the woman on top of me back and crawl backwards against the bed frame, only to realize it's made of arms and legs that are sewn together. Looking ahead, I see this woman smiling, her razor-sharp teeth glistening. She looks as though she's about to feed. She looks at me as though I'm on the menu, and as I gaze at the hanging meat hooks, some with body parts, and others with the horrifically still, living bodies of others, less fortunate souls, I am snapped to reality completely. I shoot up and shove past the creature before me, who simply smiles. I hear the voice of the receptionist, but this time it goes from pleasurable sounds to distorted and twisted in sound. She asked me what's wrong, before telling me it'll be easier if I just gave in. Then there will be no pain at my initial end. This gives way to laughter as I rush out a door and into a hallway. I see the various parts of genitalia hanging from the ceiling above, as though decoration. I run through the halls, but they seem to shift. Flesh makes up carpet and floorboards, and as I push forth, I see the sight of men and women merged as one. This isn't in a sensual way. No. They're screaming as they've been pieced together like some hellish experimental puzzle made of flesh and human body parts. I continue onward until I see a door made of beating hearts. I shove my way through to find myself in a room. On one side is a swing. It's normally chain rungs made of stretched and pieced together lips, which screamed as the flesh seat, covered in eyes, watched on in horror. In the center of the room was the receptionist, still looking every bit as attractive as before. I'd seen through the illusion, however, and was well aware she wasn't as she appeared. The figure pretending to be Sarah previously walked up to the woman and smiled. I saw Sarah for a faint moment before she returned into the demon she actually was. I heard the receptionist's surly voice inside my head again, and she told me to give in. She assured me it'll be okay. I wouldn't remember the horrors I'd seen. I just needed to accept what I've always wanted. I could be with Sarah. Promise after promise she continued to give me, but I wasn't falling for it this time. No, I shouted at the woman in defiance and anger. A smile graced the woman's lips as she simply said, "Very well then." I heard screams and arms reached from the floor beneath me. A familiar madness began to overtake me as I tried to focus. I fell to one knee, my hands cupping my ears as I look ahead. The receptionist remained the same, but her counterpart still slipped in and out from Sarah's form. The world turned red around me as the two figures faded. The sounds of screams turned to moans of pleasure, which then turned to more screams. I refused to give in again and stood up, looking for a way forward. A gaping chasm opened in a wall before me. It had steps leading to a room, which were pink as I walked up to them. Moaning came from the chasm as I walked up the steps, and the door opens before me. Inside, I saw a potential future again. I saw myself on one knee, asking Sarah to marry me. I saw her happily accepting. I saw us playing with our kids. I wanted it to be real, but I knew it was a trick. It became apparent to me that in order to have any chance to get out, I needed to accept reality. The truth was, I hadn't told Sarah how I felt, and there was no guarantee if I had, this would be the result at all. It was clear this place was projecting my wants. From the pleasures in my mind to, most pressingly, the wishes I had for a future with the woman I secretly loved. It was apparent more than ever to me what was happening. This wasn't a sealed future. This was a reflection of what the heart wished, and a want of the flesh. The realization of my situation changed what I saw around me. There was shaking, much like an earthquake. The floor of flesh and body parts opened up before me, and a chasm led to a black pit. I felt two sets of hands reach across my body, and I heard two voices whisper into my ear. "You can still stay. Last chance," they said. I felt horror at the sight below me, a horror that was so terrifying that internally, part of me was screaming to stay and accept what little pleasure I'd get before dying in my current place. I'm sure staying, in a messed up way, will be the most sane option. I couldn't stay, however. I needed to push forward. Far below, I heard the gnashing of teeth and the screams of flesh being torn from bones. I was afraid, but I closed my eyes, pushed the grips of the two figures around me away, and fell forward. An instant dread and regret shot through me as my eyes widened to the sight of teeth. I turned and reached out, but all I saw was the smiling of the receptionist and her partner fading into the distance as the teeth snapped shut and all went black. All I could hear now was screaming.